All right, welcome back to Just Another Solar Podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me, Karl Jensen.
Luke, how you going?
Good, mate. And live and in person, Nigel Morris.
G'day, everyone.
So we've just finished day one of Energy Next and the Clean Energy Summit conferences, which are side by side in Sydney. And we've got a motley crew of some other solar people around. They say don't work with children and animals and they should put solar people in there, but we're going to find out. Before we kick into it, I mean, Nigel, you've had a pretty big day. You've done 2 presentations, one in each conference. Do you want to give a bit of a wrap on that?
Oh, sure. Quick summary. Great little session today in the Solar Masterclass, the CC Solar Masterclass. To be honest, I wasn't sure how many people would be there, but the crowd was actually quite good. I was on a session on solar maintenance, which was a really interesting one because solar maintenance is one of those things that you go, that's just a cost to my business. But is there an opportunity there? And are there ways to do stuff with software that mean that solar maintenance doesn't become a burden but actually becomes a way to make money? So that was the discussion. And then I was on a really fascinating panel full of people who were so smart it was humbling, to be honest. We had a real mixture of fascinating people discussing the importance of small-scale solar in the grand scheme of things, which was great fun because 90% of the room were large-scale people. So we were able to talk about, the really, really critical role that the small-scale solar plays. And here's a fact of the day, most relevant to where we're sitting here in this bar, actually. I was looking up the value of the solar industry today, somewhere around $5 billion-ish, equal now in Australia to the amount of beer sold every year. So beer and solar in Australia, equally loved.
And Karl, how's your day been, man? Day one of the show.
Well, I'm definitely contributing to that beer tally, Luke. At the end of the day, I've been on the iStore stand and it's been hectically busy. I am asking the standard question, which is how many megajoules are there to a kilowatt hour? And I still haven't found anyone that has got the right answer.
Ooh,
so that's
3.6.
3.6 says Prince. So at the end of the day, we've still got a long way to go. There's lots of new manufacturers again that I haven't seen before. A couple of new EV chargers that are amongst the crowd. It's just a shame that we've got dumb energy retailers now that I've just signed up for, where they're paying me more money for my feed-in tariff than they're charging me to charge the car at night, which of course is exactly the opposite of what we want to do for the grid. So nonetheless, I'm going to give them an absolute ripping, and they think that an EV uses 2.5 megawatts a year. I'm going to shift all of my production, all of my demand from midnight till 6 a.m. and it'll be more like 12 megawatt hours for me while I'm exporting 30 during the day. Anyway, so fortunately there's a lot of excitement at the show, and the venue is the right size for the crowd, so that means we're shoulder to shoulder with people, which adds to the buzz and excitement.
Yeah, for sure. I found I got around the show in an hour and a half, and that was including some conversations, stopped at some stands. So it's not huge, but the turnout, like you said, it fit the room perfectly. And I saw a session from Warwick Johnson from Somewheres. And that was really interesting because obviously he's a big data man. We should get him back on the podcast soon.
Yeah.
Just excellent stuff. But some of the stuff he spoke about was that PV alone is dead. And he was saying that you've got to look at the value adds as a business. So we're talking about obviously the batteries and heat pumps and heating and cooling.
EV chargers.
EV chargers, all of that stuff.
Control, VPPs,
the
whole suite, didn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that we've been talking about on the podcast for a long time.
Yeah.
So he spoke about that. One of the other interesting things he said is that we've all been predicting this market consolidation where the big companies would swallow up the smaller ones. We'd end up with the Bunnings effect. But he said the consolidation hasn't come. His conclusion to that was that we've got to look at the mid-tier companies that are operating good businesses, and they need to feed and get bigger and bigger, and that's the solution. It's not that we need to consolidate, it's we need to back the good ones and see them grow and do the right thing.
It's true. He talked about that, and he was on the panel that I was in too. And he's actually got some data, and we've been trying to quantify this for years. But he's now got the data that says there are 7,000 solar businesses in Australia. So we now know that for a fact. He's got some really good data on it. The other one that was equally intriguing, and I challenged him on this and said, I don't even know if I believe it, but according to the data he's got, of those 7,000 businesses, 16% of them only do 5 installs a year, right? So what he was essentially playing out for us is this long tail of tiny little businesses. And, it might be 5 large solar installs a year, or they might be jumping in and jumping out of the industry. But it kind of highlighted one of the big challenges, which is for a manufacturer or a supplier, you're dealing with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of companies who are in and out of the industry. And, it's really hard to even justify the cost of compliance if you're doing a small volume in this industry. So there's a lot more to come from what he's found out.
You also have to wonder the commitment to the industry, though. So what are the long-term outcomes for those customers? Because if those people are happy to flit in and flit out and, do 5 installs a year, if things go bad, they've done substandard installs or they're not using good products, what's to say they're going to support it for the long term if they're not really that committed to it, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to be in that bucket. It turns out little Beattie tells me that a particular manufacturer through a particular wholesaler, we've heard this story before, 5 years down the line, all the product that's out there, back sheets are failing, they've left the market, what do we do now? And it's happened again. And my guess is that, it's still going to keep happening. Any idea that we think, hey, we've got these great products in the market and there's no reason for anyone to choose anything else, there's still stuff out there that costs absolutely peanuts, and there's still shonky operators that go and buy it.
Now, it'd be good to throw around to some of the other people here. We've got a table full of people who have had different experiences today. The first one I want to throw to is Ashley Bryan from the Authorised Solar Gain Distributors. Ashley, what stood out to you?
Today, definitely for me, I attended the Women in Renewables Luncheon, the CC, and that was really fantastic. They had a panellist of mentors within the industry and some not in the industry, but it was just really fantastic to know that they're around and how much you can gain from having a mentor, throughout, even there's been so many experienced people out there that get to a point in their career that challenges and then employ a mentor and they help them through and they grow from that and, then they can help someone else, So I found that really fascinating and I hope I can find myself a fantastic mentor. That'd be fantastic for me.
Yeah. Do you think that's a challenge though? Like you're regional as well, right?
Yeah, so definitely for me being regional, that will be a challenge, but I'd say that, if you can find someone that will work remotely to help you, a lot of the talk today was they do regular catch-ups, whether it's a coffee or a lunch date every couple of weeks. If you can set aside a time for a Zoom meeting or something like that, just so that it is available to everyone regionally, because obviously solar's everywhere, not just metro.
And as a woman in solar, it doesn't matter, you're a person, how's your journey been so far?
Oh, for me, so far it's been fantastic. I feel really blessed to work with the people that I do, and definitely a long way to go for everyone, in women especially in the industry, but we won't back down. And I'll be there for every step of the way, hopefully.
I think the numbers are a bit higher than this year than last year. That's the thing that stood out for me. We had a booth here last year. We decided not to this year. But I think the traffic so far, it's only day one, but the traffic in the hall this morning seemed quite strong. I think there was less booths. It was a pretty small show, and I must admit I didn't recognise 90% of the suppliers who are on those booths. That was good and bad. There was some junk. But there was also some pretty cool stuff. So, it's a good little expo. It's small, though.
I've got to have a shout out for TW Solar. So the last show, they had a little furry bear thing. and it's the first dog toy that the dog hasn't destroyed. And I went to the stand and I asked them if I could have another one, and they've got a bigger version this time. So now I've got one for each dog, which is a real show highlight.
The next person we're going to throw to is Matt Guy from Jerry. Hey, Matt, how's the show been for you, man?
It's been really interesting, to sort of dovetail into what you were saying there about Warwick. I think storage is the future. I think storage is everything. I look at storage as the dark side of life. I mean, a lot of homeowners either work in an office during the day and they don't work at home. So how are they utilising what the PV is actually capturing during the day through their inverter? And essentially, and then on weekends, you want to enjoy your life, so you're not going to spend a lot of time at home. For me, being in portable power, I was actually blessed to see one of the market leaders there in portable power, and to see them stepping into an ESS modulation where they've got essentially expandable systems, and they're offering it really well. So I think portable power, to me, mess with ESS or almost off-grid living or tiny homes is, for me, I think it's a great way where the economy is going to be positioned. So I really like that.
So tell me, though, you said like they do the portable batteries, but they're also doing a fixed one as well. How does that work?
Well, they've got an expandable range that offers micro living without an IP rating. So instead of having, the portable batteries can be used as portable batteries, or they can be coupled and become a larger system. So instead of, say, just having a kilowatt of power, they've got 5 or 7 kilowatts. I know that our tech team back in HQ are developing stuff that's, I think, even more groundbreaking, that can go up from what I believe 64 kilowatts of power. So it's an interesting thing, because we're changing the way we live, and I think what we've been through as a globe, and especially Australia, as a post-pandemic, the way we work from home and live, portable power is going to become, I think, a really big part of our lives if we can see it. It's like, say, the iStore that I know some of the people at this table have talked about. If you could start to learn how to utilise your power, that's where you're going to see the real benefits. Or your water storage, or how to generate the electricity from it, or the heating from it, from what the nature can give us.
Oh, very good, man. And now, one other thing I saw was robots again. I love robots, every trade show. So panel cleaning robots, and there was one that does all the mowing between rows of solar farms and ground mount arrays. Did you see that one?
Big orange thing.
Yeah, the big orange thing.
Yeah.
And it just it goes through automatically between the rows, takes care of all the vegetation. So that was something pretty cool.
I'll add one thing to that. One thing that an analogy that I believe that's at this table and at this industry, if you can think of a village in Africa, right? I say to the village, I'm going to give someone $100, whoever can run fastest to the tree. I don't see that in this industry. I see everyone linking arms and walking to the tree, sharing the prize. And I think the robotic age that's out now, all of our kids are going to be, they have kids at this table, are going to be a part of it. And that's where the robots we're seeing today, and I think what you're paving through Solar Gain and SG Wholesale and everyone else at this table, is paving a cleaner, greener way for the future that essentially the robots are going to be powered by. So it's going to be phenomenal. So there's 2 robots we're seeing now, the panel cleaning, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And also AI, who plays with ChatGPT and all the other cool tools that are coming out. I mean, it's nuts. Next level. Spot on. So one of the other guests at the table is a co-founder and director of Solar Cutters, a friend of the show, Jack Long, and very well known in the industry. I want to throw to you, Jack, and just give us your impressions of the show and anything else. What's going on? Give us an update.
Thanks, LB. I just liked how it wasn't, compared to other shows, just being completely overwhelmed with massive stands and marketing, and it was just more like networking and people. And I walked around today, and there's a lot of key people from key companies here who didn't have stands, but they were still here representing the companies. I don't know, I think after we've been going to trade shows since 2010, 2011, and you just get over it, to be honest. To be quite frank with you, just get over the massive stands, the marketing, the merch that ends up in landfill anyway. And it was nice because there wasn't a lot of that this year, and it was just like key people. Like I saw, I think Fronius were here with a few people walking around. I had good conversations with them, and Solar Edge were here. They sent key people. That you don't need these massive stands and marketing budgets, to represent and network with people. And I think finally now, people are realizing, you don't need to have a massive stand to do any of that stuff as well. And obviously you had the cutters drinks last night, which was a raving success. So yeah.
I have to say, though, man, that, if everyone took the same approach and said, we'll just send key people and not have a stand, then there'd be no stands. We'd just be in a hall, basically shaking hands.
No, my point, my point was, you usually walk into, the other expo in Melbourne and then, the other one in October every year. And there's usually 4 or 5 major, basketball-sized stands and just merch and product and people and suits everywhere. And I don't know, you just don't need that stuff anymore, I don't think. Well, that's me anyway. I don't know. I'm just over it, to be honest. Take the mic. Take the mic.
I wrestled the mic off you at that point, mate.
I'm not over the people. I'm just, just overwhelming the stands every year and the merch and just.
I think it's
back off AS.
We had a good chat last night with Jack about the quality of merch and the definite standout from all of the people that participated in the conversation was we need less but better quality merch. So at the end of the day, even crappy pens we don't want. We'd rather a decent pen than 50 shit pens.
And I'll add on to that. So me and Karl were talking last night, and we'll just to reconfirm that we just want better quality free solar merch and not just rubbish that ends up in landfill.
Practical things.
Yes, practical things that
Gotta work and last.
We're not plugging the Jerry, mate. That's all right.
Settle that. You just did.
I love my Jerry. Yeah. But last thing I will say is my example of that was what Karl was saying. Was a good example last year at that other expo in Melbourne. There was someone walking out of the expo on the last day with literally a full trolley full of data sheets in plastic, full wrapped in plastic, tape, just thousands of data sheets. And where are they going to end up, to be honest? Because they're probably advertising like a 315 panel at the time, and now it's whatever it is, 400.
Now, Nigel, you work for a tech company. What's your view towards manual data sheets and lots of bits of paper and stuff?
I think they're dead. I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be just a QR code on everyone's booth that says, here's all our marketing material. Take a copy, digitise it. At the same time, I'll grab your email address so I can slam you with some great offers and everyone wins. It's easy.
The next person I wanted to get the view of is from Clenergy, and he also has one of my favourite channels that I watch. It's Convos with Clenergy, always a good chat. So check it out on YouTube. We've got Sean Guzzi. G'day, Sean.
Thanks, Beattie. And thanks for the plug. It's always very much appreciated. One thing that I was excited and surprised about was it seems like there was a lot more activity around solar panel cleaning and bird netting and those types of things. And, Clenergy, we released a product a couple of years ago and there hasn't been much success. The Fender product with that one. But it's exciting to see that there might be some more opportunities in that space, that the solar panel cleaning companies they've been out there for a few years now. They're growing. There's a market for it because, a lot of people don't realise, but in most cases, if you don't clean the panels or underneath the panels on your roof every 6 months, then you void the warranty on your roof sheet.
Yeah.
BlueScope Steel's got that written right in black and white on their on all of their warranty documents. Yeah. And so, that to me was probably something I hadn't seen at any shows before and something that was interesting. And yeah, I think that'll probably be a growing space moving forward.
Sounds good, Sean. I haven't seen any of those things yet. I hope to see them tomorrow. There's particularly this robot that mows the grass, because at the moment that robot's me. There is no robot. And I think the Flymo could probably do with an update. Probably a robot vacuum cleaner's probably in my future also. I can see Ashley waving her arms madly, so she's going to tell you something about those.
Oh, I actually don't even know what else to say, but you need one.
All right, so there goes another 1,000, right? My old man calls them units, so we'll just spend another unit. Bryn's familiar with spending lots of units on lots of developing your business. Bryn?
What I really wanted to talk about was back to what Nigel was saying earlier, about what Warwick was saying, Nigel, is how much there was, 7,000 players he worked out. Yep. Well, I did a study just in Victoria alone recently, and we've got 7 stores of Solar Gain in Victoria. And since Solar Victoria came out in 2018, August, I think it was, they've done 250,000 installs, and we've got over 100 employees in Victoria, and our market share is 1.7%.
Wow.
So that goes to show how many players there are. And that's where I think that we really need to work on educating the market of exactly where a lot of small players are. And we need to really work with that because there's lots of them.
Bryn, that suggests that there's 10,000 people working in the Victorian solar industry alone. And obviously Victoria is 1 out of 5 states. So,
I've done a study on some years ago now, but I came up with a number somewhere around 55,000 people. This is direct employment. You look at any other employment study, and they'll also count indirect employment. So that's the truck drivers who come to your facility and
people selling food at the supermarket.
It's everybody, right? So easy, more than 50,000 people.
And I suppose it opens up a broader industry, because I was chatting to a couple of distributors today, the great guys from PV Connections, and I was chatting to Rick, and conversation came up about the skinny margins in distribution. It gets really hard that everyone's complaining about the margins on panels, top to bottom, and the other components. And we were talking about where are the next opportunities coming. So you've mentioned some of the adjacent sort of industries, from bird netting to mowers to cleaners to robots to everything else. But some of the other things looking forward is that there was a call by the relevant federal government department a week ago, and they were discussing that it's very likely there's a stewardship program coming in for solar panels, and they've already got pretty much a framework which looks like a levy on importers or manufacturers, and they've already costed out logistics and what it's going to cost to do it. So it's likely it's going to come. So if you look at recycling as an industry and logistics around it, that's one opportunity there. Bird netting, that's one opportunity there. O&M and all the other little tiny bits and pieces. We've been focused on installing solar, batteries, heat pumps, whatever else, EV chargers. But there's probably some new industries that are going to pop up that are going to make sense.
So you said that Rick said that it was tough. So how to make a small fortune in the solar industry is the same as aviation. You start with a large fortune.
That always helps.
The panel market at the moment, as we all know, is absolutely brutal. A pallet of panels, or even so far as a container of batteries that you bought 2 months ago, is now worth thousands and thousands of dollars less than it was when you paid for it. And there's a lot of people sitting on expensive stock, and we feel their pain.
Yeah.
And a question for Nigel. With PV module recycling, when do you think there will be some sort of rebate or incentive for installers, retailers to actually recycle modules? Because in my experience, in my previous job, we had to A, transport the modules ourselves on pallets to a recycling depot, and then B, pay ourselves to get them recycled. When do you think there'll be some sort of stewardship, official stewardship or rebate program, or any sort of incentive for installers, retailers to actually recycle the stuff?
That's a good question, Luke. I think you've highlighted that we're getting ever closer, right? And I've actually, a good buddy of mine was involved in trying to get the PV recycling industry up in the US, and it cannot be done without a levy. It cannot be done, and it doesn't have to be much, 1 or 2 cents a watt. Right, that's all it's going to take, and
It's got to be funded somewhere, right?
It's got to be funded somewhere. So someone's going to have to pay, or else it's going to keep getting thrown away. So I think the appetite is there, and it's on the federal agenda, it's on the state agenda. We've got John Grimes getting very excited about it. Oh yeah, batteries will be soon afterwards. But as long as there's either got to be value in the raw materials that they can recycle, and if there's not enough, which is the case with modules, then it's got to be a levy.
So on the call, I think a couple of years at longest, in my opinion. So they've already modelled this, and they've built in the levy, but they've also built in the legacy panels that weren't covered and that there's not a levy for. So there's actually, that's what they revealed, there's actually model in there, and this is a bloody good thing.
Energy Council's working on that.
Yeah, in Queensland, they've got the pilot program with the Queensland government.
It's already started, yeah.
Do you think it'll be a national thing? Will there be one, like fee, or will it be?
Yeah. So Queensland government's working with the SEC to bring in a program there, pilot program. But this was the federal government talking about it, and they've already modelled it and costed it, inclusive of logistics and all the problems we've spoken about previously with Anthony Vippen from Lotus Energy. I've had some great conversations with James from PV Industries based in New South Wales. So they've got a lot of the EPA grants in New South Wales. They've got technology to separate glass from backsheets.
And Lotus is doing a really good job of it too.
Yeah.
They're doing a fantastic job.
That's Anthony. He's been on the show. So, and Luke even hooked him up with someone in Intersolar who could recycle a particular part of the panel that they couldn't do.
Did you, Luke?
Yeah, so I was just going through the halls.
Tell us about that, Luke.
I was going through the halls of Intersolar, and there was this machine that a German company, and it does separation of all the parts and components of a solar panel. So PV Industries, they separate the backsheet and the silicon and the glass, and then they process it and get high purity in terms of what they pull out of it. This machine takes pulverised material, so it's what Lotus is doing. It's like a mining process where they'll pulverise it. But what it can do is separate your silicon, your aluminium, and all the other bits. And they had the example there. So I was just walking past and said, this is really cool. Chatted to the guy, got his details. I flicked it to James from PV Industries and then Anthony Vippen. And he's like, hey, man, I've been trying to contact these guys. This is because that's what they're doing. That's their process. So I think just that levy is going to be enough for it to be commercially viable. And I think that PV panel recycling at end of life is going to be a booming industry.
I couldn't agree. Can I change the subject?
Please.
I want to drop a ruthless, shameless plug in because we actually did something last week, made an announcement last week that in my view is actually one of the coolest things that's been done in solar for a long, long time. Everyone needs consumption data, right? We know that. But the challenge is that a consumption meter is going to cost $500 plus, right? It's expensive to do. And in fact, in a lot of places, you can't do it. There's not enough room in the meter board, the meter's remote, the inverter's on the shed, whatever. Becomes a very expensive exercise. $500 to $1,000 extra on a solar system that's costing someone, $5 or $6 grand. So last week, groundbreaking change in that finally we are now able to get consumption data from the retail meter. Already exists in every single home. What excites me the most about it is A, it makes solar more accessible. B, it utilises a piece of hardware that's already there in every single solar system. So we just launched this last week. It's got a long way to go yet before we get all the retailers on board. It's at the moment only 3 retailers, and they've restricted whether we can't get live data. The data's a day behind, all those kinds of things. But it is now available, so you can now get consumption data without a consumption meter.
So, Nigel, I have to put in my shameless plug, and that is my invention, which is the solar storage subwoofer. So just like we have a little subwoofer that sits underneath our TV, we have 2.5 kilowatt hours worth of storage. And with that product from Solar Analytics, it works just by me plugging it into the PowerPoint next to my TV because it's got the data. It can do the charging and discharging wirelessly. And that was the stumbling block. We can't do it without all of that hardware, which is expensive. The battery and the inverter that charges and discharges is cheap. But we need the data to be able to do it. And of course, that was a stumbling block before. So I look forward to being able to integrate that into Karl's solar battery subwoofer.
I just think it's great that a software company doesn't have to wear the liability of an OEM smart meter, which they do fail.
Or the installer, right? That's the other great thing about it. The installer doesn't have to spend the time, the money. They don't have to procure it. They have to install it. They don't have to warrant it. If it goes wrong, they don't have to fix it. It's all down to the retail guys.
Very good. Now, we haven't got time for much more. I'll just throw around for last thoughts before we wrap up. Start with Karl.
That's me. That was my gem of information there, the
Karl subwoofer.
The Karl battery storage device that doesn't need any shit that sits in your board, which is the expensive bit.
Yep.
You know, look at a gateway. A gateway's a $1,400 piece of kit with another $1,000 to install it. That's $2,400 advantage by a piece of software. It's a bit like Charge HQ is for smart charging. You know, it's an $8 a month piece of software as opposed to an extra $1,000 worth of hardware. goodbye smart hardware, don't need it.
Yep.
I'm going to do it with API commands instead. So API commands looks like the way it's going to go with solar analytics and being able to control other devices. So that means that Nigel's got a device that can potentially control people's fleet of batteries as well. I'm excited.
And you'll be driving home in the Tesla Model 3. You obviously drove up here again.
Yes, indeed. Drove up here again and stopped on the way up at a hotel that had 10 EV chargers in the car park, at least 100 kilowatts worth of PV on the roof and a 100 kilowatt hour battery in the car park, which is inspirational because the guy just got that battery in the car park and it was 140 grand. So happy days. Someone's made a shitload of money out of that.
And Nige drove the live wire here, and that's been charging. Hopefully you don't get fined for leaving it in there for too long, mate.
Yeah, it's downstairs, taking advantage of the 20 or 30 charges that are down in the bottom of the conference facility, but that should be good. But my parting thought, solar equals beer, beer equals solar.
And that's the best way to build a relationship.
Nigel, you know that it's $50 to park your bike down there for the day, yeah?
I don't want to let my tricks out, but the boom gate's got a bit of a gap, Karl.
Well, I think we'll leave it there, and that's the end of day one. We'll be back for day two tomorrow, and we'll do it all again. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, like, share. Just share it with anyone who might get benefit, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.